The cassette had Grandma's handwriting on it, and 4 words that made the whole room go cold: "Play after I'm gone." The lid gave that brittle little click, like it had been waiting years to be heard. Inside, a normal-looking tape sat in a cracked case with a faded sticker, her name, the date, and a warning in the tidy cursive she used on Christmas tags. We were standing in her bedroom, the one that still smelled like lavender soap and old paperbacks, because that's where grief sends you when the kitchen gets too loud. Someone had opened drawers that hadn't been opened in a decade, looking for paperwork, looking for something to do with their hands. And then we found it. Not in the jewelry box. Not in the photo albums. It was tucked behind folded hand towels in the back of her dresser, inside a plastic sandwich container, like the truth needed 2 layers of hiding. On the label, beneath those 4 words, she'd written one more line. Listen together. No stopping. I wish I could tell you we hesitated. I wish I could tell you we respected the mystery. But the promise was already burning in the air. Grandma had recorded something in secret, something she didn't feel safe saying out loud while she was alive. And in a few minutes, we were going to hear it. Within the first half hour, you'll understand why she pressed record, and why our family stories, every one we've repeated for years, were about to crack right down the middle. Because this tape wasn't a goodbye. It was a correction. We found an old player in the hallway cabinet, still wrapped in a grocery bag like she'd kept it, just in case. My aunt's fingers trembled as she pushed the tape in. My uncle stood behind her, arms crossed, jaw tight like he could hold back whatever came next. And then, her voice. Not the sick-in-bed voice we'd heard at the end. Not the polite phone call voice. Her real voice. Close, steady, right there in the room again. If you're hearing this, then I'm not at the table anymore. She took a breath, small, controlled, like she'd practiced. I don't want you to cry yet. Not yet. I need you to listen. A chair creaked. Someone swallowed hard. And Grandma began, the way she always began when something mattered. With a story we thought we already knew. There are things in this family you can say like lines from a play. You say them at weddings. You say them after 2 glasses of wine. You say them when a younger one asks why we don't see certain people anymore. In the room, my mother's eyes stayed fixed on the spinning reels inside the cassette window, like she was afraid to blink and miss a word. You say Ray was selfish. That name landed like a dropped plate. Ray, my uncle we didn't talk about. The one who walked out. The one people blamed for every missing holiday and every awkward empty chair. You say your aunt and your other aunt just drifted apart. You say the inheritance wasn't meant for us. You say the ones who don't come to Christmas, don't come because they don't care. She paused. And when she spoke again, her voice got lower, not dramatic, just honest. Most of what you say is not how it really happened. My cousin's hand flew to his mouth. My aunt shook her head once, as if she could shake the sentence loose from the air. And Grandma, our sweet, careful, peacekeeping Grandma, kept going. I'm telling you because the stories you've been living inside have made you hard in places you didn't have to be. And they've made you loyal to things that weren't true. Have you ever realized, all at once, that a family story wasn't a story at all, just a verdict that got repeated until it sounded like fact? On the tape, Grandma's breath hit the microphone. Before I tell you what happened, I have to tell you why I pressed record. It was the summer of 1999. I remember because the air conditioner rattled like it was full of coins, and I had a doctor's appointment I didn't want to go to. She laughed once, soft, not amused. The doctor said words I didn't like. Not a sentence. Just words. The kind that make you go home and look at your own hands like they belong to someone else. In the bedroom, my uncle shifted his weight. He already knew what those words were. We all did now. But this tape wasn't about her illness. It was about what her illness unlocked. I started thinking about what would happen if I was gone and you still hated each other for reasons that weren't real. And I thought about how many times I tried to fix things by staying quiet. She described herself at the kitchen table, late at night. Everyone asleep. The house ticking and settling. A glass of water sweating a ring into the wood. Her hands hovering over the record button like it might bite her. I tried to write it down. But paper can be folded. Paper can be hidden. Paper can be misunderstood on purpose. A voice is harder to twist. Then, a confession that made my stomach tighten before she even told the details. I'm making this because I didn't want you to interrupt me. Because if she'd told it in person, someone would have talked over her. Someone would have cried. Someone would have begged her to stop. Someone would have protected the version of the family that felt easier to live with. This is the only way I can tell the truth all the way to the end. She inhaled. And the truth starts with Ray. The room got so still I could hear the tape's thin hiss behind her words. You called him selfish. You said he left because he didn't want responsibility. You said he took what he wanted and disappeared. A pause. Ray didn't leave because he didn't love you. My aunt's eyes filled instantly, like her body understood before her mind did. Ray left because he was keeping a promise. And then she took us back, carefully, scene by scene. It was 1987, and your grandpa was still opening the hardware store before sunrise. He kept the weekend cash in a metal box under the counter. It was stupid. I told him it was stupid. He said, people around here don't steal. She described the store like we'd all been there, the bell over the door, the smell of fertilizer and cold air, the way Grandpa's keys jingled like punctuation. That spring, we started noticing money missing. Not a little. Enough to make Grandpa's face go pale behind the counter. At first, he blamed himself. He'd count twice, then 3 times. And then he started watching the family. Can you imagine being watched by your own father like you're a stranger in his store? Ray worked there the most. He was the one who closed up at night, the one who knew where everything was. So when Grandpa got scared, he did what scared people do. He chose the easiest person to blame. Grandma's voice tightened, not angry. Wounded. He blamed Ray. In our family mythology, that's where the story started. Ray got caught, Ray got defensive, Ray left. But Grandma told it differently. The night it all broke open, I was in the kitchen with your aunt, my daughter, because she'd asked me to come over after dinner. She didn't say which aunt by name. She didn't have to. In the room, 2 sisters sat on opposite sides of the bed, both staring at the carpet like it might swallow them. She had mascara under her eyes, and her hands wouldn't stop moving. She kept folding a napkin into smaller and smaller squares until it looked like a tight little bandage. Then Grandma said the words that changed the temperature of everything. She told me she'd been taking the money. A sound escaped my mother, half breath, half disbelief. Not because she was greedy. Not because she wanted nice things. Because she was trapped. Grandma explained it in the unglamorous way real life happens: late notices, hidden bills, a loan she couldn't pay back, a mistake that started small and then got teeth. She had signed something she didn't understand. And then the calls started. And then the threats, quiet ones, the kind that don't leave bruises but still make you shake. She was paying someone to stay away. Not from the store. From the house. She told me if her father found out, he would never forgive her. And she told me something else. She said, if you tell, I won't survive it. Grandma went quiet for a second, and you could hear the room she'd recorded in, her old refrigerator humming, the faint clink of a spoon against a glass. I should have told Grandpa. I know that. But I looked at my daughter and I saw fear I didn't recognize. And I chose the thing mothers choose when they're cornered. I chose the secret. Then came the part none of us were ready for. Ray found out by accident. She described it like a scene you can see without trying: Ray staying late to mop the floor, finding a receipt that didn't make sense, hearing his sister crying in the back office, Grandma's voice hushing her like she was still 12 years old. He came into the kitchen after midnight. He didn't yell. He didn't slam doors. He just stood there, holding the receipt, and said, "Tell me the truth." Grandma's voice softened. When he realized what it was, his face changed. Like something heavy settled in him. And then Ray did the thing we never imagined in 1,000 retellings. He said, "I'll take it." A beat. He meant the blame. In the bedroom, my uncle's arms slowly fell to his sides, like his body couldn't hold the old posture anymore. He said, "If Dad needs a thief, let it be me. If she needs time, I'll buy it." I told him not to. I told him we'd figure it out. He looked at me and said, "You won't. You'll hide it until it rots." Have you ever met someone who could see your fear clearer than you could? The next day, Grandpa confronted Ray at the store. And Ray didn't defend himself. Grandma described Grandpa's voice, loud, shaking, full of betrayal. She described the way customers pretended not to hear while they browsed nails and paintbrushes. Ray just took off his apron and folded it on the counter. He said, "You're right, Dad." And he walked out. That's the moment our family turned him into a villain. And Grandma let it happen. Ray didn't steal from that store. Ray stole something else. He stole the shame that belonged to someone he loved. Some people leave so you don't have to. The tape hissed. Grandma swallowed. And I let you hate him because I was afraid you'd hate her. A long silence in the room, ours, not the tapes. Even the grief felt different now, like it had been rearranged. And Grandma wasn't done. If this was the only lie, I could die with it. But it wasn't. She moved to the next myth, one we'd repeated with a shrug for years. You said your two aunts stopped speaking because they were stubborn. You said they just drifted. You said it was nobody's fault. She exhaled, and you could hear a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was my fault. My mother's head snapped up. My cousin whispered, "What?" like he couldn't stop himself. After Ray left, the house felt like a room with a broken window. No matter how much you cleaned, you could still feel the cold. Then she told us about a Sunday afternoon, cheap paper plates, a roast that dried out because no one wanted to admit they weren't hungry, the sound of Grandpa's fork scraping harder than it needed to. One of the girls said, Ray did what he did because someone made him. She didn't know the truth. She just felt it. And the other sister, the one who'd been the closest to Grandpa, snapped back, fierce and loyal. Don't you start making excuses for him. Grandma could have stopped it then. She could have told them both to sit down and listen. Instead, I panicked. I thought if they started pulling on that thread, the whole sweater would come apart. So she did what peacekeepers do when the truth feels too sharp. She redirected the blame. I told the second one, quietly, later, that the first one had been talking to Ray. I said she was taking his side. In the bedroom, one aunt's face went white. The other's eyes squeezed shut, like she'd been bracing for years and finally got hit. It wasn't true. I said it because I wanted the questions to stop. And it worked. It worked so well you didn't speak for 23 years. What does it do to you, living 2 decades inside a misunderstanding someone else planted? Grandma's voice cracked just slightly. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. She let that sit, no music, no distraction, just the hum of the tape and the ache of real accountability. Then she corrected one more small story, the kind you don't realize has teeth until you hear it from the source. And you know what else you said? You said your cousin Ben was lazy. You said he never got it together. My cousin Ben wasn't in the room. He hadn't come to the funeral. We'd told ourselves it was because he didn't care. Ben was the one who sat with Grandpa when he started forgetting where he was. When Grandpa would wake up in a chair and call me by my sister's name. When he'd ask where Ray was, and then get angry because nobody would answer. I pictured Ben, young, exhausted, trying to hold a grown man's confusion in his hands like water. Ben didn't talk about it because nobody praised that kind of work. You only praised the kind you could take pictures of. We judge what we don't bother to understand. Grandma paused. These are the easy truths. There is one more. And it's the one I almost didn't record. In the room, my aunt reached forward, like she was about to stop the tape without thinking, then pulled her hand back. Because Grandma had asked for one thing. No stopping. I need to speak to Ray. She said it like she believed he might somehow hear through the years. Ray, if you're listening. I want you to know I didn't choose you because you were strong. I chose you because I was weak. Then she told the hardest part, not about Ray leaving, but about the moment he tried to come back. 2 years after he left, Ray called the house. It was late. The phone rang and rang because nobody wanted to be the one to answer. She described the wallpaper in the hallway, the way the cord twisted around her finger as she lifted the receiver, already knowing whose voice she'd hear. He said, "Mom, I can't do this anymore." He said, "I miss you. I miss the kids. I miss Dad even though he hates me." Grandma's voice went small. He asked if he could come by. Just to talk. Here's where, in a better version of the world, she would have said yes. She would have sat them down. She would have told Grandpa the truth. She would have let the family be messy and honest and real. But Grandma lived in the world she lived in. I told him no. A strangled sob came from someone in the room. I told him his father wasn't ready. I told him it would only make things worse. I told him to give it time. Then the line that made my throat burn. What I really meant was, I wasn't ready. Because if Ray came back, he might demand the truth. And if the truth came out, Grandma's daughter, the one she protected, would be exposed. And if she was exposed, she might break. So Grandma held the family in a lie the way you hold a door shut in a storm, with everything you have, even when it hurts. Ray cried. Not loudly. Not like in movies. Just enough for a mother to hear and never forget. He said, "So I'm still the bad guy." Grandma inhaled shakily. And I didn't correct him. The tape hiss suddenly sounded louder, like the house itself was listening. That's what this cost. It cost Ray his place at the table. It cost you an uncle. And it cost me the right to pretend I was only a victim of circumstances. Then she revealed the part that explained another long-standing mystery, the inheritance. When Grandpa died, I changed the will. She said it plainly. No softness. In our family, we'd always said the will was complicated. We'd said, it was just how it was. We'd said, don't bring it up. I moved money where I could. Not to punish anyone. To try to pay a debt that wasn't written down. A pause. I sent Ray checks through a friend. He sent most of them back. He didn't want the money. He wanted his name. If you had the choice, would you take the money, or your place in the family? Grandma's voice warmed for the first time in minutes. Ray was never selfish. Ray was loyal. And I used that. Then she spoke to all of us, the living people in the room, and the younger ones who'd never even met Ray. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to stop telling the old stories like they're entertainment. I want you to stop using them as excuses to stay apart. And then, the simplest request, one that felt impossible because of how long we'd avoided it. Call him. If he's alive, call him. If he's not, say his name out loud like he mattered. Her voice broke, fully, finally. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I loved him. Tell him I should have been braver. She took a breath and steadied herself. And to my daughters. Stop making me the reason you can't forgive each other. I am gone. You are still here. Silence. A long one. Then the quiet, final sound of the cassette reaching the end. The room didn't move for several seconds, like we were waiting for her to say, "Just kidding," the way you do when something is too heavy to hold. My aunt, one of the sisters, stood up so fast her knee bumped the bed frame. She turned to the other sister and opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Then the other sister whispered, "You told Mom I was talking to Ray?" My first aunt shook her head, tears streaming now, not even wiping them away. "I didn't," she said. "I swear I didn't." And that's when the fight we expected didn't happen. Because the tape had done something strange, it moved the blame off each other and placed it where it belonged, on fear, on secrecy, on the way love can get twisted until it hurts people. My uncle, Grandpa's only other son, sat down hard on the edge of the bed and stared at the cassette player like it had betrayed him. "All these years," he said, voice rough. "All these years we said he was a thief." My mother wiped her face with the heel of her hand. "We built our whole family around that," she whispered. "We built rules around it. Because we did. We built a family identity, the loyal ones who stayed, and the selfish one who left. And now, what were we?" Someone asked the question that felt like the only honest thing left. "Is Ray alive?" My aunt blinked, as if she hadn't allowed herself to wonder. She pulled her phone out like it weighed 50 pounds. "I have an old number," she said. "I never deleted it." "Have you ever kept a number for years, pretending it was an accident?" She pressed call. The ring sounded too loud in that small room. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then, click. A man's voice, older than I expected, cautious like he'd learned not to hope too fast. "Hello?" My aunt's face crumpled the way paper does when you finally stop trying to keep it smooth. "It's me," she said. It's your sister." A long pause on the line. Then, just a breath. "Hey," Ray said. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just, there. She couldn't get the words out, so my mother took the phone, hands shaking. "Ray," she said, voice breaking, "we listened. We listened to her tape." On speaker, Ray didn't speak for a moment. And then he said something that made my chest tighten. She finally did it. He didn't ask what was on it. He already knew. My uncle turned away, wiping his eyes like he was furious about it. My 2 aunts sat closer, by inches at first, like strangers sharing a bus seat, until their shoulders touched. Ray's voice came through thin and crackly. "I never hated you," he said. "I just couldn't stay and be that person anymore." My mother swallowed hard. "We did," she said. "We made you that person." "No," Ray replied, gentle but firm. "You believed what you were told." And there it was, the difference between blame and responsibility. We weren't guilty for being misled as kids. But we were responsible now that we knew. So we made plans, not dramatic ones, not movie ones. Real ones. We asked where he lived. We asked what he needed. We asked if he'd let us come see him. And when Ray said, quietly, "Yeah, I think I'd like that," the whole room seemed to exhale at once. Later, after people went home and the house returned to its creaks and shadows, I went back into Grandma's bedroom alone. The cassette was still in the player. I pressed eject, and it rose slowly like it was reluctant to leave. I held it in my hand and realized something I hadn't let myself think until then. Grandma didn't record the tape because she wanted to control the story. She recorded it because she was running out of time to fix the damage her silence had done. There's a difference, isn't there? In the weeks that followed, the official family story started changing, awkwardly, imperfectly, like learning new words in a language you thought you already spoke. At the next family dinner, someone mentioned Ray without lowering their voice. A photo got taken out of a box, Ray in a Halloween costume, grinning with 2 missing teeth, and put back on the shelf where it belonged. One aunt texted the other a simple message. "I'm sorry. Coffee?" And it didn't fix 23 years. But it opened a door. We also told Ben, Lazy Ben, what Grandma had said about him on the tape. He didn't say much. He just sat down on the porch steps, stared at the yard, and nodded like someone had finally set down a weight he didn't know he was carrying. Because the tape didn't rewrite the past. It rewrote what the past meant. It turned villains into people. It turned drifting apart into a chain of choices. It turned selfish into sacrifice. And it left us with a question Grandma couldn't answer for us. Now that we know, what kind of family do we want to be? The kind that protects itself with lies? Or the kind that loves each other through the truth? I took the cassette out of its cracked case and slid it into a new one. I wrote the title again in my own handwriting, careful to match hers, and underneath I added a note. Played together. Kept with love. Then I drove it to a small shop and had it transferred to a digital file, because some voices deserve to outlive plastic and time. And if you've got your own family stories, if there's someone you've been taught to blame, or someone you miss but don't know how to reach, maybe this is your reminder that it's not too late to ask, what really happened? Before we go, if this story held you, if it made you think of someone you love, tap like. It helps the channel more than you'd think, especially here at Dust of Old Days. And if you want more slow burn, nostalgic stories, hidden recordings, family truths, and the kind of endings that leave you quietly changed, subscribe to Dust of Old Days. Because sometimes the past doesn't need to be buried. Sometimes it needs to be heard.